I read through that 200 plus page audit on the Canton PD, and it left me with some lingering questions. And I know it's probably stuff that we've already talked about. I'm sure it's stuff that came up in court, but just it gets my brain fired up and I start to ask these different questions. And so just bear with me. I'm just going to say some things out loud and let's see if these are also the same things that cause you confusion. Now you can see what they did is they pieced together a timeline. And they pieced this together going through all of the reports and sort of building this out to the best of their ability based on what interviews they did with the officers and then all the reports that were written that day. You see it starts up here with the 5:04 a.m. This is an actual recording of the call that Carrie Roberts made, where she just called the station and was like, you didn't happen to pick up John O'Keefe last night, right? Like you don't have like a drunk sobering up in your tank, do you? And so that was that call. And then at 6:04, when the 911 call comes in from Jen McCabe, that starts the whole thing. Now, on dispatch duty, at the time the call comes in, so the 6:04 call comes in, it's Good that takes the call. And you see right here, it says, Sergeant Good dispatches Officers Seraph and Mullaney to Fairview, 34 Fairview. And then you see right below it, he then notified Sergeant Lank and Lieutenant Gallagher to respond. Now, Lank testified that he was not on duty, he just got a call at home. Now, he is a sergeant. And what's interesting about this is part of that audit was talking about how when officers arrive at some sort of scene that looks like it is serious injury or potential death, they're supposed to call like superior officers and have them come in. So remarkably, this is like the one time they follow procedure. But they call Lank. I think there are more sergeants, but they call Lank. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. My bigger question is, Good is already at the police station. And I don't know if the dispatch thing that they do in Canton is you're like on desk duty where you sit there for like 8 hours and whatever calls come in, you either go yourself or you determine who goes. So was Good on duty? Like was he working, the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift taking all the calls and he was like the dispatch on duty? Or was he just the guy that happened to walk in at 6 o'clock and be like, oh, the phone's ringing and pick it up? I do not know, but I'm curious if he was there all night, that would have put Good at the police station when Higgins arrived at 2:20 something in the morning. He'd been drinking. He was there to do paperwork and move some cars around in the parking lot. So I'm just curious if their paths crossed during the night. Now, what's interesting is if you read through this, and it's basically like Officer Mullaney said this, and Officer Seraph said this, and everybody says this, and they're going through everyone's statements. And here's the next page. They're talking about how they're asking the women, like, what's going on? What's happened? What happened? Karen's like, I don't know. She says she doesn't remember being at 34 Fairview the night before. So they're kind of talking through this. And what's interesting is you go down here and you see all of the quotes. Is he going to die? Is he dead? You know what's missing in all of this? All of this. 6 different people at the scene and not one shred of evidence here that Karen said things like, I hit him. What if I hit him? Oh my God, I might have hit him. Did I accidentally hit him? Nothing in regards to John being hit anywhere in this conversation. None of the officers reported that they thought he'd been hit by a vehicle. None of them said anything about Karen maybe somewhat being to blame. It was all, is he dead? Oh my God, is he gonna die? I don't want him to die type language. 2 things that are really important about that. One, it seems that the I hit him language was not bounced around until Lank was called back to the house later when Jen McCabe said, now that I remember, I think she said she hit him. And then that sort of took a life of its own. Magically, all of these people got up on the stand, both I bet at the grand jury and I know in the trial, they all got up there and said, well, if I remember correctly, I think she said something about her hitting him, but Alan Jackson called every single one of them on it and said, well, that's funny because it's not in any of your reports. And also, if Karen was running around yelling, I hit him, it's my fault, I did it, I killed him, oh my God, I hit him. To me, well, A, that validates that it could have been a homicide or at least an accidental death, right? And you have somebody admitting to it right there on the front lawn. So why the hell wasn't she read her rights and put in a car? Clearly, if Karen said one thing about hitting John, there wasn't a single person there that took it with an ounce of seriousness, because it wasn't even listed here, and she was not arrested or even read her rights or brought to the station for a videotaped interview. There's also this piece right here that I want to call out for a minute. Lank arrives basically as the fire rescue guys are taking John to the hospital. So Lank doesn't see with his own eyes John laying on the lawn. They take him over, they show him where he was, they start snapping pictures. Interesting that they took pictures of the spot in the snow where he was, but they took no pictures of him prior to the EMTs arriving. No pictures of him laying there, only pictures of, like, you know, a big patch where he was laying and the blood, which I'm gonna show you in a minute. But Lank, you see here, he contacts the Stadies, right? He calls and he gives them a condition. He tells them what's going on. We think there's going to be a death. And Trooper Michael Proctor calls him back. Now, I'm going to operate with some grace here, and I'm going to say I believe that Proctor probably said to Lank, hey, listen, I'll be there in a bit, but in the meantime, you know, collect statements, collect evidence, and I'll meet you at Canton PD, right? So I want to think Lank did all of the stuff he did was because Proctor said, go ahead and do it. If they really thought that this was a murder, if Karen was saying, I hit him, and they thought, uh-oh, this could be, if nothing else, at least an accidental death, and she's to blame, and they've already called the Stadies, what they should have done was said, hold on, this is now their case. Let's just rope it off and let's just wait here until they arrive. There's no need for us to let them do the evidence collection, let them do everything. We'll just rope it off until the Stadies get here. But Officer Lank keeps going business as usual, even though really technically, I think this is about the time that Canton verbally recused themselves. This is the time they handed over the case. Now they talk about like some of the photos that were taken. You see here it says they secured the blood evidence in red Solo cups. Now they got the Solo cups. Again, this is on Brian Albert's front lawn. So you could just walk up to Brian Albert's front door, ring the doorbell and go, you got Ziploc bags or something I can collect some evidence in. He doesn't. He walks across the street to another cop who lives across the street. That person is Thomas Kelleher. He's the Canton PD Deputy Chief of the Investigation Division. Now, I get this. I understand this because Lank is sitting here thinking, well, this guy is a Boston cop. This guy's basically pretty much my boss. So I'm going to go over to his house and loop him in. So they go over there, and that's where they get the red Solo cups. But it says here that Kelleher recused himself from the investigation because he knew the Albert family. But so did Lank. So why didn't Lank recuse himself? When Lank arrived, I mean, I get it. When Lank gets a phone call and they're like 34 Fairview, that address might not ring a bell. But when he arrived and saw whose house it was, he should have said, whoa, Nellie, hold on. I know these people. Let me get another sergeant here. Or it's Gallagher, Mulaney. I need you guys to secure the scene. I'm calling the Stadies. Like, there should have been an entirely different thing that happened here. But Lank didn't. Lank made sure he was the one that collected the evidence. He made sure he was the one that talked to Brian Albert. He made sure he took statements from everybody, even though Good had already taken statements. You see right here, it says that sometime after 8 a.m., they left. The evidence was collected and they left. And then Jen McCabe calls him back at 9. And again, when Jen McCabe calls him back and says, I want to amend my statement, what Lank should have said was, hey, Proctor will be here any minute. Let's wait and have you talk to Proctor because he's taking over the investigation. It's no longer my investigation. So why don't you just wait and you can update with Proctor, but I'll put in my notes that you called because you remembered something. But he doesn't. He goes back to the house to hear what Jen McCabe had to say, and that's where the I hit him story started. Quickly, the photos on the right are the blood evidence that was found at the scene. That's it. John had that big, huge gash on his head, lost a lot of blood. Where is it?